he has another business. So, before I present this paper, I would like to tell you that this paper is part of policy making process in our organization, in Fiscal Policy Office in Ministry of Finance. This is the real sample of research-based policy in Ministry of Finance. So before the government make the policy, they need to analyze the impact of proposed policy to the economy. In this case, the impact of electric subsidy reform to the textile industry. Next is our outline. Let's jump to the background. In this figure, you can see the electricity price structure in Indonesia. The red line showing the electricity average production cost rupiah for each kWh, and the blue line showing us the average price of electricity. So as you can see here, the gap between the average production cost and the average price of electricity is getting wider from year to year. So the government need to subsidy the price gap. So this explains why the government the electricity subsidy is getting bigger from year to year. As you can see here, in 2030, the total subsidy for the electricity subsidy reached 101 trillion rupiah. This is a very huge number. This number is equal to more than 2% of GDP. And if this number of electricity subsidy is adding with other energy subsidies as fuel subsidy, the figure will be more than 5% of the country GDP. That's for the subsidy alone. So this huge subsidy is create a serious fiscal burden for the government. Not just that, this electricity subsidy also mistargeted. As you can see, this is the electricity subsidy, the total electricity subsidy achieved by various group of electricity consumers. For example, the green line, the green bar is the electricity customer comes from the household sector, and the blue line, the electricity consumer from the household sector. As you can see here, for example, this is the electricity subsidy for the I4 category of electricity subsidy, electricity consumer, which is the largest manufacturing in Indonesia. So for the I4 category of electricity consumer, they achieve more 7.41 trillion rupiah of subsidy, and this amount of subsidy, 7.4 trillion rupiah, is enjoyed only by 61 electricity customers. And when you divide this number with the number of customers, I think roughly you will get 100 billion rupiah per customer in this category. And who takes all of this subsidy? The large manufacturing company. And who takes all the subsidy is the real one. The subsidy is of course the company owner or the company shareholder. So this is seriously mistargeted. So the reason why the government need to reform the subsidy, as I explained before, the subsidy creates fiscal burden, and the subsidy also mistargeted. So this is why the government need to reform the electricity subsidy. But in the other hand, this policy will have impact on large manufacturing industry, especially for textile industry in Indonesia. As you can see here, we can see the share of textile industry in international GDP. For the share of textile industry in national GDP has been declining nearly in 45% in just one decade, from 3.3% in 2003 to 1.9% of the total GDP in 2030. This is, some people say this is the sunset industry. And when the government do policy subsidy reform in electricity subsidy reform, this industry will be hit by the certain policy. This is not the fact that this is not the only fact that the electricity subsidy is the performance is getting worse. We can see also from the global export share of textile in the selected country. This figure shows us the share of global textile export on selected country. The share of Indonesian textile export has declined from 2.26% in 2000 to 1.62% in 2012. And in the 2012, the Indonesian position in global textile exporter is almost overtaken by Vietnam. So this is show us that the textile industry is declining in the performance in the recent decade. So according to the background of this research, the main objective of this study is to analyze the impact of the electricity subsidy reform, especially on the textile industry in Indonesia. So, jump to the methodology. We use GGE computational general equilibrium model. Why do we use this GGE model? Because this is economic-wide model. It describes the motivation and behavior of agent in the economy. It contains sets of equations which is describe the behavior of each economic agent, including the household, government, the industry, and the rest of the world. So this the CG model is relevant to analyze the impact of electricity price subsidy. For example, the government may affect the electricity price by changing the amount of subsidy, and of course that will affect the firm, their decision in their input cost, and that will also affect their output price of the commodity, and the effect will spread again to the household and in terms of their consumption, and so on. So the major challenge in this research is to disaggregate the sector to capture the specific target of the policy. So we disaggregate these two sectors, the textile sector and electricity sector, to capture explicitly the specific target of the policy, which is only large manufacturing sector. For the electricity sector, we disaggregate the sector into the electricity for large manufacturing, which is contain I3 customer categories and I4 customer categories. This is the main target of the electricity subsidy reform, and the rest of electricity. So we divide this electricity sector according to the electricity production, according to their consumer. So we this aggregated sector using the data of electricity statistics and the Indonesian manufacturing survey. Well, for the textile, we also disaggregate the sector into large textile industry and small to medium textile industry. We divide this disaggregate the sector according to their electricity consumption. So the target of the government policy of subsidy removal will directly affect this large textile industry, of course. we disaggregate this sector using the data from Indonesian manufacturing survey. So we designed 3 simulations, 3 different scenarios. We prepare this scenario to analyze the impact of electricity subsidy reform. So each scenario is designed with specific assumptions so that we can compare all the result of the impact of electricity subsidy reform or comprehensive. This is the simulation design. In Sim 1 and Sim 2, we simulate the electricity subsidy removal for large manufacturing in Sim 1 and Sim 2. The only difference between Sim 1 and Sim 2 is the time frame. In Sim 1, we run the simulation in the short run, while in the Sim 2, we run the simulation in the long run. So we can distinguish the effect in the short run and in the long run, of course. And for the Sim 3, the electricity subsidy reform policy goes side by side with the policy of investment in the manufacturing industry, including the textile industry. According to some literature, Suryawati found that approximately 80% of the machines used in the textile industry are obsolete. Most of them are used for more than 20 years. That's why the productivity in the textile is low compared to the other countries. So this is the impact of the simulation on the macroeconomic. In the Sim 1, Sim 2 and Sim 3, the effect of the policy of subsidy removal, electricity subsidy removal is pretty small, pretty mild, because the effect of the particular policy is not directly hit the households, but indirectly via the commodity produced by a large manufacturing industry. In the Sim 1, the consumer price index is increasing 0.041%. This is because the electricity price from large manufacturing is increased. This will also increase their final product. This will make the inflation 0.041. So when the inflation rise, the real consumption is getting lower 0.045, and also the export is decreased 0.061%. In contrast with consumption and export, the government, they will save certain amount of subsidy from electricity subsidy reform, and they will reallocate the saving from the subsidy into the government expenditure. That's why the government expenditure is increased 0.854%. So in the sum, the net effect is still positive for the PDB, because the negative effect of real consumption and export is compensated by the increase in government consumption. And for the Sim 2, in the longer term, the impact of the policy will be more negative. This time, the increase in government consumption cannot compensate the decrease in consumption, investment, and export. That's why the real GDP is decreased by 0.159%. Contrast with Sim 1 and Sim 2 and the Sim 3, when the policy of electricity subsidy reform goes side by side with the policy of investment, the productivity is increased. That will make the GDP increase. In some, GDP will increase 0.409%. This is the impact of the policy in the macro variable. So this is the next. This is the impact of the policy in the fiscal. As you can see, the government will save 8.9 trillion of rupiah from the subsidy reform. In the longer term, 9.6 trillion. And we zoom directly to the textile industry. So, in the for the small to medium textile industry, they only slightly, very tiny. This one slightly affected by the policy because the policy did directly hit Sundam. The policy is directed to the large textile industry. In the short run, the decrease is not so much, but in the longer run, the policy will make the large textile industry become more suffer. Especially the export will decrease 40%. So it will hurt the textile. This policy will hurt the textile industry that already become the sunset industry in the long run. So policymakers need to consider the effect of the policy in the longer term. But when the policy goes side by side with investment policy, they will raise the productivity of the large textile. So for comparison, the old textile machine can produce 600 yarn per hour compared to the new textile machine which can produce 950 yarn per hour. This is 50% increase in the productivity only with changing the machine. So on this simulation and same trade, when investment policy goes side by side, the sector output will increase for small and large medium textile. So the conclusion from the research, first, it is reasonable to remove electricity subsidy for large manufacturing industry for purpose of easing the fiscal burden and correcting the misstated subsidy. Two reasons support this argument. First, the SIM 1 and SIM 2, the policy will on subsidy saving of 8.9 trillion and 9.8 trillion respectively. And the second one is the impact of the policy is relatively mild because it does not transfer directly to the final consumer. So this policy is reasonable. But there is another note, and in the second conclusion, the policymaker needs to consider the effect of the policy on the large textile industry in the longer run. As in the longer run, in the SIM 2, the policy of electricity subsidy remove will give negative impact to the large textile industry, such as the export will decrease by 40%. So this is the result from the SIM 3, which policymakers could decide proper incentive and compensation to offset the negative impact in the large textile industry. In the simulation 3, SIM 3, when the policy goes side by side with another offset policy, which is investment policy, the result will be positive for the industry. Various methods can be used to induce investment in the textile industry, such as tax credit for new investment, or second, investment refund, on the third, soft loan for investment purpose in the textile industry. Thank you. I think this is all.
Thank you, Pak Anda. And then the next, I think before you can give some applause to Pak Anda, the next we invite Pak Djoni from LPEM UI to give some comment for Pak Anda paper. Pak Djoni, you have time 15 minutes. 15 minutes.
Indonesia. Thank you for Mr. Angga for your presentations. This is the overview in the paper. The one is this paper tends to analyze the impact of the removal of the electricity subsidy on the textile industry in Indonesia. This paper is intended to provide economic analysis of policies related to large-scale manufacturing industries that have been implemented by the government. And certainly this paper very relevant to the implementation of government policy in the early 2014 regarding the roadmap, the electricity tariff. This is we can look the roadmap. This paper used the CG model and IO data modifications. IO data modification performed one is the disaggregation the electricity sector, electricity for the large manufacturing industry and the rest, and the second is disaggregation the textile industry into large and other industry, small to medium. And the study showed the impact of the removal of electricity subsidy in large-scale manufacturing industry on the macroeconomic indicator discussed in the textile industry. I think this is statement from the paper. This study is relevant to current policy based on the roadmap, electricity tariff roadmap. And the second is the to achieve its objective and measure the impact with good precision. The study conducted the disaggregation of the electricity and the textile sector. This is the review, my review in the on this paper. This paper stated, explained that like other developed countries, the Indonesian government having difficulties to choose between energy efficiency and energy price. I think what does this mean, the restriction of energy consumption versus the subsidy removal? I think this issue because in Indonesia certainly I think there is no energy efficiency because government Indonesia effort leads to the restriction of energy consumption rather than efficiency. So this is my suggestion for your paper. The customer in the I3 category consists of the main industries and the I3 customer that listed in the stock market. So this is the definition about the large scale manufacturing industries of this paper. This paper assumed the large scale manufacturing industries is the I4 and I3 classification category. We can look at the PLN. So I think it should explain more about how to calculate it, how many listed company from the I3. So how to measure the electricity consumption based on the I3, the listed stock market. Textile sector disaggregation. This paper stated explained based on the electricity consumption and disaggregation into small and to medium and textile industry and large. Has it been controlled using the manufacturing industry statistic? I think we call it in Indonesia is the industry besar sedang from PBS. I think you should control using the IBS from the PBS, so that the output and electricity consumption in large textile industries can be known with the. This is the table 1 in your paper is explain the production structure of the textile industries. I think it should really state whether it is the input structure, maybe. So cost structure. This IO terminology is the input structure or the cost structure rather than the production structure. So it should explain what is meant by surplus and the capital because the capital the less than of surplus. So does capital mean depreciation? I think capital is the depreciation because in the IO table after the surplus is the depreciation. We know in the IO table, is the letter is only formal letter. For the informal letter, including in surplus. So that's the letter included. You know, yes, okay. And related to subsidy, textile industry and the output of electricity sector, whether this paper used the information of the proportion in 2013 to disaggregating IO 2004. No, there is no explanation in your paper. It would be better to clearly explain how it is. This is related to simulation strategy. If only the textile industry is disaggregated becomes 2, but other industry are not, how does the model ensure that the subsidy removal only affect the last industry? So in your paper, only you disaggregation only textile industry, not the all industry. So I think only textile disaggregated to industry last and others. However, it's well known that the removal of subsidy will be perceived also by the small and medium industry, engaged between sectors. So I mean is if you disaggregate, for example, chemical industry, you not disaggregate to the large and the small medium. If you remove electricity subsidy on the large scale, I think this is the impact not only in the large scale but on the small and medium and the chemical industry. In the SIN 1 and SIN 2, I think it should. I think you mentioned as the allocation is the government expenditure, yes. And SIN 3 is it should clearly explain about the allocation of subsidy saving for investment. And this is are all subsidy saving fund used for investment, or if not, how to use the remaining fund. There is no explanation in your paper. In the results, I think you explain in your paper is the impact on its sector or its simulations. So we can look at the impact on the other sectors, not only in the textile. It should clearly state why the impact on real GDP in SIN 2. In SIN 2 is the simulation in the long run. Yes, is negative. It is related to the allocation of subsidy saving or closure used in the model. Because this is the distortion of economics removal, and so why in the long run electricity subsidy removal in the large scale manufacturing is negative impact on the GDP. So the impact on macroeconomic in SIN 3. This is the SIN 3 impact on the macroeconomic. The export will decrease, but we can look at the SIN 3. This is the only textile industry. This is the real export of the textile industry increase by 15%. So it should give further clarification of this matter related to the difference in the macroeconomic and the textile industry. The last is the analysis. The result need to be more elaborated, particularly the impact on other sectors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Djoni. You are on time. Okay, I think now we have a 15 minutes for discussion from the floor. Perhaps someone have a comment or some input or will criticize about this paper, please. Okay, Pak Budi.
Thank you very much. I think this is an interesting paper and the discussion is actually very comprehensive. I just want to stress several points that maybe has been mentioned. Number one is this, so I can understand why you would like to disaggregate the textile industry between large and small, because you would like to distinguish the impact of the electricity subsidy reduction on large textile and small textile industry. But I don't understand why you need to disaggregate the electricity sector. Because even if you don't disaggregate the electricity, because you would like to have the reduction of subsidy only for the electricity sector. Okay. Second is that I agree with what Djoni has mentioned. It is very crucial to properly disaggregate the chemical industry. Particularly if you have an error on doing disaggregation. So for example, you put too much use of energy in the large electricity in the large textile industry, then certainly when the subsidy reduction, it will have larger impact on those industries. So one thing that probably you can do to see whether the way that you disaggregate this properly is you use input per output. You know, for example, how many electricity per output in the large textile industry and comparing to the small textile industry. Looking to that structure, we probably can have confidence that the way that you disaggregate it is okay. Now, and next question is on the simulation. I think it should be clear what happened with the money that the government has, because it doesn't have to subsidize the electricity anymore. Is this money always goes to government expenditures or goes to saving? Some goes to saving or something. So you need to be clear on those things. Otherwise, your base scenario and your simulation scenario are not comparable. Second is that on this investment in the large textile industry, where the money comes from. Because if the money comes from outside, then it is not a fair comparison basically between your base scenario and the scenario simulation 3. And finally, I think I agree with Djoni. It's a bit strange when you have a long run, you get a negative impact compared to when you have a short run scenario. Because in the long run, you should be able, isn't it the capital more flexible so then can be allocated to the best place, where the capital price is the highest. So it's, it seems to me supposed to be that when everything has been adjusted, the impact it could smaller, but negative is a bit questionable. Thank you. Oh, this is the impact on the GDP. Yeah?
Okay, Pak, perhaps you want to address Pak Budi question?
For Djoni, thank you very much for the input. I think this will be our input to define our paper. And for Pak Budi, I think the first question is already answered. And thank you for remembering me to properly disaggregate the sector. We disaggregate the sector by using the data comes from the electricity manufacturing company PLN, and the data comes from the Indonesian manufacturing survey. So we process both of the data with electricity consumption and the structure of production. So we doing process from those to that and for the for the question where the government money goes in simulation for in Sim 1 and Sim 2 in the short run and long run, it is assumed that the government money is not going to saving, but it's spent according to the current proportion of the government expenditure. So this is the money come from the subsidy saving. The government use the money for the government consumption, all of the money. And for the SIM 3, the investment simulation, this money is used by the government to some of this money is used for the government to fund the investment initiative. And for the long run, while the GDP is negative, as we can see in the short run, the decrease in the consumption and the real export is already is covered by the government increase in the government consumption. So the government consumption increase compensate the decrease in the export and the household consumption decrease also. But in the same though, the government expenditure can no longer compensate the decrease in the consumption and the real export. That's for me.
Can I respond? So, did you say in simulation D3, some of the money is actually put for government consumption and some for investment? Then the government consumption should be lower compared to SIM 1 and SIM 3. So this is because of this. They could be higher because of the multiplier effect, but the number is like twice. So not that sure that is what happened.
Okay, I will check the simulation again. I will run the simulation.
Okay. Is there any perhaps someone will ask? Okay.
Thank you. Pak Budi was asking the validity of the numbers, but let's just assume the numbers are correct. If I were the president and I only have 2 more years, I will focus on SIM 1. It's short run and it increases the GDP and aggregate employment. But if I were, let's say, what's the term, benevolent leader, benevolent president that that cares about long run, then SIM 1, then I would have to focus on SIM 2 and SIM 3, right? Long run concern. So now the comparison is between SIM 2 and SIM 3. In SIM 2, you only have subsidy reform. In SIM 3, you have subsidy reform plus investment, right? My question is, how do you do this investment and why textile? You do this on when you do electricity subsidy reform, and it will impact on all manufacturing sectors across the board, right? Yet in SIM 3, you seem to suggest that there will be specific policy that only benefits textile industry, because you only shock textile industry, if I understand that. I'm not expert in CGD. So that calls for a question about what's so special about textile industry? Why do you propose to improve this sector, this specific sector? If you care about export, if you care about employment, there are other sectors actually that can provide. I just pull out some data on 2005. Export is bigger in other sectors, for example, machinery. Employment is bigger, for example, in food or food products. So this kind of industrial policy, of course, will need some specific explanation, specific section in the paper why textile is very important.
Thank you, Pak Ajo. I think this is a very good input for our paper. We need to explicitly explain why must textile industry instead of the other sector changing.
Okay, thank you. I think it is Prabowo and also Jokowi. They prefer this one, I guess. But this subsidized, I guess. I don't know. Okay, we give applause to number one. And this is Pak Edi from Kota Gudang, ya, Jogja. Pak Edi, you have 20 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity. I will present my paper, the impact of health insurance for people or Askeskin on the other health status. I am sorry, I will promote my website. My website at www.surveymatter.org. If you have any time, please open the website because today we are launching a new data from FLS Timur 2005. As a background, as poverty community has a poverty health condition and poor education and no skill and no access to information and no access to health facility. So need support from the government. And then 2005, Indonesian government issued a health insurance for the poor or Askeskin program. From the program to improve in health status, productivity and welfare. So the summary of Askeskin is health insurance for the poor families in Indonesia. It's aim to improve access and quality of health service to poor community and achieve the highest level of community health as possible. There are some information about Askeskin. Askeskin launched in 2005. The Askeskin program targeting about 1/3 of Indonesian population, in 60 million. Askeskin is the first step into the universal coverage. Provided basic outpatient care, third-class patient care, and an obstetric service packet for free. For remote area also includes mobile health services and some other special services. They target all individual ineligible household and the poor and the near poor. And the target procedure is central government allocated budget to district based on this agreed national poverty statistics and the district and lower level administration and the responsibility to identify the recipient and distributing the insurance fund. This is the definition of health from WHO. Health is state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So this picture is the relation of head function and relative quality of life relation of thought. Head relative quality of life. Head relative quality of life is accumulation from head and function and quality of life. Head is depend on the physical environment and then the smoking habit and the consumption and the activity, and function I think is old, and this quality of life depend from the social capital and social environment, and then head function and quality of life the cumulative from to head and quality of life. From the background, my research objective is to know whether Askeskin has improved access to health facility, and the second is to know Askeskin's impact toward the health status of health relative quality of life measurement. My hypothesis is health insurance for the poor increases visits to health facility, therefore improve their status, health status. Research methodology. My data is Indonesia Family Life Survey, FRS 2000 and 2007. This data panel data. As you know, FLS is Indonesian Panel Household and Community Survey, created in 1993, 1997, 2000, and 2007. Data in 13 provinces. FLS represented 87% condition of Indonesian population with population rate more than 93%. The FLS collects demographic, socio-economic, and health function, and nearly 1,050 households. My dependent variable is the dependent is health relative quality of life. We use questionnaire SF36 and brand corporation in FLS. The score 0 until 100. And number second dependent variable is access to health service. I mean from visit to outpatient care in past 1 month prior to survey. Image Djoni 1 and 0. The independent variable is the primary independent variable is under Askeskin ownership. We make Djoni 1 and 0. And then control variable is socio-demographic. There is education. We make 3 level, primary, secondary, and university. And then X, we make 2 group, 40 until 54 and 55 until 69 and 70 and above. And marriage status, we make Djoni 1 and 0. The total observation is 6,125 individuals because there are only 40x years and above. In FLS respondent is all household member in household, but in my research only 40 years old above because questionnaire of SF36 asks only 48 years and above. And then there are more information about dimension of health relative quality of life. There are X dimension. There are X dimension. The first is second physical function. The second is physical role and feeling heart and uncomfortable and general health and social function, vitality, emotion aspect, emotional well-being. And from the X dimension, we make a 2 summary, physical summary and then mental summary. From 2 summary and the calculated to health relative quality of life. There are the final of health relative quality of life. So my analysis, we use impact evaluation method. So we treat the FLS with 2000 as the baseline and FLS with 2007 as the expose program. And the treatment is for Askeskin 2007 as the control group is to have full Askeskin 2007. There are identification of problem of Askeskin. Number 1, access to insurance is not random, so there are endogenous variable pick up. The adverse selection, which people may optimal into insurance program. Positive selection is risk aversion, well educated, individual with experience using healthcare and correlated with either health status or wealth. On targeting program, access to insurance is likely correlated with either unobserved household or community characteristic, and coefficient will be bias, and characteristic and even membership of household may be systematically related to and shock to have a status. This is some problem of identity problem in Askeskin. So, because there are many indigenous variable in distribution of Askeskin and visit to health service, we choose a fixed effect model. To measure the increase in use of health facility, we use this model, and then to measure the impact of insurance for the health related quality of this model. Alpha, dou and beta is the parameter, and dou is the impact of Askeskin. So, dou in this model is impact Askeskin to increase in use health, and dou in here impact of insurance for the health related quality of life. This is my result. Descriptive statistic panel data set, that's 2000 and 2007. Total number of observation 2000 is 6,125, the same because it's panel data, panel respondent. Then set 0.46% is female, the same because matching sex 2000 and 2007. And then maritime status is 63% is maritime status in 2000 and decrease in 2007 because there are older and so divorce. Then Askeskin only 14% Askeskin, visit Askeskin is 1.3, so including group 2 and then education level. And outpatient 2000 is 15% and 2007 is 70%. And then the result from health related quality of dimension function is decreased because the order 2000 and 2007 physical role is decreased too because the order the 7 years older feeling heart uncomfortable is increased, vitality is decreased, and then summary, physical summary is decreased because 7 years old, and the mental summary is decreased, and the total health related quality of life decreased 0.9. There are the result from fixed effects model. The last Askeskin, interaction Askeskin and here is not significant in utilization of health service. And then the second, interaction Askeskin and here is not significant in health related quality of life. So my conclusion, Indonesian health insurance for the poor or Askeskin has very little impact to increase visit to health facility by the individual during the first year of its implementation. And then number second, it increased the health related quality of life. However, the increase was not significant in maintaining the health status. So, need a longer time to see the impact of the Askeskin program on health related quality of life. Maybe from average 2014 will be able to execute this. The next research job, if you're interested, or I think next research to look into the contribution of accessibility, quality of health service, and willingness to use facilities. Yeah.
Okay, we applause Pak Edi. Next, I think we invite Pak Arief perhaps to give some suggestion or comment to this paper. Arief, we have 10 minutes.
I think it will be less than that.
Okay, so thank you very much for allowing me to review this and read the paper. So I'm very much appreciative the opportunity. So about the paper first, so this is just a restatement of the conclusion before. So basically, Eddie would like to ask this question: does Askeskin have any impact on health outcome and hospital visit or hospital utilizations? So there are two questions. And then use fixed effect panel data regressions, if I understand correctly, with two ways of as data. The health indicator that is used are self-reported various indicators, which is at the end you aggregated or average, and then the explanatory variable used is some economic, socio-demographic, and also health-related variables. And the result is Askeskin does not have any impact on health outcome and hospital utilization. So that's the result. So my general comment on this paper is first is given the size of the target, which is 60 million, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a very important issue. It's very topical. So this is relevant. And also it has the potentials to contribute to the literatures. Particularly its impact on the health status of the health outcome. And because as far as I remember, I didn't manage to find any impact on the health outcome or the output. I found on the input. The second one is it's quite a challenge. It's quite a challenge to link the impact of this program to health-related variables. It's very challenging, especially for us economists, because there are many complicated things there in terms of the medical relationship, behaviors, and things like that. So I did a few, trying to connect, given the existence of hot water inside the house to the diarrhea in cities. It's difficult to find any. It just using the iris data. So it's a challenge. However, the result need more scrutiny, because this is a judgment which is saying that look, this doesn't work. So, and the why is not really discussed elaborately. So I think that's my first criticism. The why is not discussed elaborately. And sorry, I'd like to divert a bit to the paper, but I think from us economists, or health issue is little research, especially from economics perspective. And as a development economist, I always say this in many occasions. As a development economist, there are two things that make me trouble at sleep. First is related to health. In Indonesia, for example, the proportions of women giving birth that died increased. Yeah. And then the other one is the real wage, the declining agricultural wage. There are two issues that make me trouble at sleep as a development economist. Because that's very simple. Everything is going up, it's two. And also I just want to share this. I already shared this on Facebook, but I want to share this with you. So, and I found this too, with the recent FAO data, this is health. Indonesia has very good, it's quite a not really good performance in health. So this is the data of stunting, this is the data of wasting. So basically our children are short and out of proportion. The body size. So this is very concerning for me. Because why? Because I believe health inequality is related to growth. Health, because it's human capital. If you are in the room with only two has a high health outcome, but the rest are not good health outcome, even though the average, but the other rule, for example, on average they have high but not so high health outcome, I think the impact to the growth will be bigger in the more equal health status. Why? Because more equal health or human capital status is more innovation can be coming from many brains. So that's why I said that the more equal in terms of human capital is better for growth. So I call it this is a growth case for equality, or the growth case for inequality, or equality, or I say equity for growth, not growth with equity. So that's my idea about this thing. So I was very concerned. Back to the paper. So basically, I found this paper from Pak Asep and Pak Robert, which exactly measure, not exactly, did half, 50% similar, because they see what is the impact of Askeskin on utilization of hospital services, and the result is opposite. So they found that Askeskin has strong impact on utilization, and particularly strong among the non-poor. So this is already published in Social Science and Medicine last year. So actually this is opposite of finding. So let me go to basic a bit about impact evaluations. So basically, this is just I copy paste from the handbook of the impact evaluation published by the World Bank. So essentially, the impact evaluation is basically an endogeneity problem. Because if T is the treatment, in this case Askeskin, there is no way we can assume that it is exogenous. Because Askeskin was the target is selected with certain parameters. So it's not exogenous. So if they're endogenous, then of course, if you are getting Askeskin, you are basically the poor, and the poor do have low health status. So it must be correlated with the error curve at the right-hand side. So that makes the covariance between the P and the error is different from 0. So that will make the beta is biased. Okay, that's the basic history of impact evaluation technique. So and then from the book also there is list of 7 standard technique to address these issues. And I'm not so sure, because I'm not very much expert. I did a few times on impact evaluation, I'm not expert. So I'm not so sure that this study has addressed this issue, because it doesn't address this endogeneity. But perhaps later people here in the room, I'm sure there are many experts more than me, can comment on this. So I'm not so sure. I'm confused. Yeah. I'm not going to go through this. I will skip. So some other technical clarifications or comments. So the dependent variable is health relative quality of life. It's the self-reported. I just wondering why do we need to aggregate? Because by aggregating, you basically assume equal weight to each of this variable, which is not necessarily the case. So we may just in fact use each. Just use why do we keep as it is each of the individual self-reported variables as the indicator of the outcome that we want to investigate. Because I don't really like indexing. I don't really like assuming it's equal weights. Just be it. So that's my suggestion. So why not keep it as it is? And then about the explanatory variable, I still don't understand why income should be divided as 5 dummies. I do not really like dummies because of it, not because of it works. I mean, if you have continuous, why do we have dummies? You reduce the variance. You reduce the variance, I think it will affect the efficiency of the parameters. So this is continuous variables. The same for schooling too. If you have schooling years, this is preference. This is just preference. So that if you have schooling years, perhaps just use the variables as continuous variables. And the next is health problems as an independent variables. Health problem, you are having health problem, you are having service problem. I'm not so sure why it's in the right hand side. Aren't they the same as the dependent variable? So that's just my criticism. The last but not least is any relevant variable excluded. I mentioned this before, previously in the previous slides, because this effect on health is very much complicated. There are many things going on. Diets. Are you jajan di jalan atau are you jajan di tukang bakso di jalan atau jajan di restoran? It has an effect. So that can be controlled. But that's it. Diets, behavior. If you are Indonesian, I took you to go to Lembang and eat chicken. And I used to bring a Japanese eat chicken with me. When we are going home, he has to go to hospital. I'm not. And the doctor said, am I proud? Yes, I'm proud. My stomach is strong. But I think again, no, yes, he's not as strong as my stomach, but he lived 80 years old. Until 80 years old, I will live only 60 years. So maybe back over. So that's so last the suggestion. So why don't you use a standard impact evaluation method such as difference or percentage coordinating, like the one did in Robert and Asep. And now it's a good time. I stop talking now. We can hear their opinions. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right. So, we have some idea about this paper. I know, I think everything is tired now, but I think at least we have one or two. Robert? Okay.
I think after the last slide, I can't not respond, right? I really liked the presentation. I only read one version of the paper, and actually it looks like you worked on the paper because the presentation is much clearer in all the parts in the paper, and it's very interesting. But yes, you find different things than we find. So how would that be? I just want to get back to the methods. You do difference in difference analysis, right? So that's point 3 in the last the set of options that were listed just now. Is working? Right, the speaker loud. Now there's another paper using the IFLS that looks at similar approaches by Elan and Jazz, right? They do something similar, and they also don't find any impacts on Askeskin, where we do find it. Now I'm not sure where the difference comes from. One thing that when we started our project several years ago, we chose to use Susunas, and we decided not to use IFLS, although the IFLS is of course obvious data set comes to mind. And one problem that we thought we'd run into with IFLS is that the baseline is very far away from the follow-up survey. Right? So you're using the third IFLS 3 as a baseline, the 2000 IFLS, and the 2007 IFLS as a follow-up. And the specification, the empirical approach that you use controls for a number of things, right? You control for anything that doesn't change over time. So for example, if Askeskin is handed out based on some static characteristics like observe poverty. Typically, it's midwives or social workers that would allocate these Askeskin cards. Let's say that poverty would be reflected by living conditions or these kind of typical characteristics that we get from anecdotal evidence that we use, then these would be typically controlled for, right, in a fixed effect approach. The problem is anything that changes over time, and that is correlated with being targeted to Askeskin, and that's a problem. And for example, what could be a problem is that targeting of Askeskin uses similar mechanisms as other programs, like the UCT, for example. It could also be that Askeskin is targeted based on shocks that people endure. Now, with a very long period from 2000 to 2007, which included the decentralization, several poverty programs, so there's a lot of things happening that could actually be frustrating your identification strategy. So that's the only thing I can think of. Another point could be that you do find positive effects, they're just not significant once you put in the fixed effect. Right, in the OLS positive affecting utilization. When you put in the fixed effect, it gets smaller, but it's still positive, but not significant anymore. It could just be that by focusing only on those 40-year-olds, and you have a small sample, that you're basically killing the variation with a fixed effect, and it's just not precise. So that's something I could think of. So I think you might want to think about, is there anything in the data set that you can include that captures some changes over time? And the IFLS is a very rich data set, so you might be able to find things. And I can think of other programs. Is there information whether people receive UCT? Is there a shocks module, for example? Could you put other questions on shocks? You can include these variables as a sensitivity analysis. Okay, the hypothesis is then if your results are biased because of all these shocks, then including these variables will change the results, right? So it's not a direct test, but you can do it indirectly, so you can assess how much of a problem still have with unobservable, time varying unobservable. Maybe others have another idea about this. I just have one other observation or a question, is that's this health outcome variable. I'm not surprised you don't find any effects there, because I would expect that health changes slower than utilization does. Right? You need some time for increased treatment to affect the health outcomes. And also your measure of health is very multidimensional. It includes a lot of aspects, and health assurance is pretty one-dimensional, right? And okay, it might affect health, it might through other channels then start affecting other elements in your health indicator. But I would expect it takes a long time for a policy like this to affect health, and 2007 might really be too short. But maybe you have I'm sure there are other questions on health in there that you could try, because I agree with the comments earlier. There's a lot of literature on health insurance, on the effects of health insurance, on the use of healthcare, on financial protection, looking at medical spending, but very little on the effects of health. So this is in that sense an interesting contribution. I can think of one or two papers that directly look at the effects of insurance on health. So I think that's maybe something to further to explore.
Thank you, Robert. Okay, silakan.
Thank you very much. My name is Dina from Purwanto University. Thank you for the presentation, Heidi. As the thing about Askeskin and other health social assistance programs is that I think we need some stories that would make your research much more connected to the policy making. The qualitative story that would complement your research. The thing is, health, Askeskin is just a little part, a tiny part, not just a little, but the tiny part of, trying to be poured on health problems in Indonesia. And Askeskin was just a tryout, basically. It goes bigger under Jampasmas. And so I wonder why did you pick Askeskin, and it's only until 2007 anyway, 2 years was such a short time period, and as Robert mentioned, it takes a long time for a health intervention like that to take impact. And Askeskin is also has very limited amount of money poured into it, and the distribution of Askeskin across Indonesia is not even at all. So if you want to do something like this, I would think you have to disaggregate which areas in Indonesia is getting Askeskin most and how much is poured into those areas, so you can calculate how much is actually poured into one person, which is actually very small. So, and the thing is, if you decide to use people to scrutinize the impact of Askeskin to people aged 40 years and above, first, my question is, why would you select that people? I wonder how many people actually get it, how many people with that age actually get it. And usually people age 40 and above are people suffering with serious illness. And whether your data has actual numbers on how many of those beneficiaries receive catastrophic illness support. If most of the time people using Askeskin is just, I don't think they're using it for serious illness. So that's probably why you find the impact is not good on quality of life. That's just a few things that I think needs to be included in research to make it more a story, substantially, Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps you want to some comment or from Robert and also from you can speak Bahasa if you like.
Oke, terima kasih. Mohon izin saya menjelaskan atau memberi tanggapan dengan bahasa Indonesia agar lebih bisa ditangkap apa yang akan saya jelaskan. Pertama, memang penelitian ini adalah penelitian sosial, di mana untuk laboratorium sosial memang banyak sekali hal-hal yang di luar yang bisa kita tangkap seperti ini. Maka dari literatur yang ada juga bahwa penelitian untuk Askeskin memang susah untuk dilaksanakan, dan beberapa literatur yang ada mereka menggunakan adalah data-data cross section. Nah, dan mengingat karena alasan itu bahwa penggunaan data cross section menurut kami adalah banyak kendalanya, dalam artian istilahnya kurang tepat untuk analisis sosial seperti ini, maka kami mencoba untuk melakukan penelitian ini dengan menggunakan data panel. Kalau data panel otomatis orangnya adalah sama dibandingkan orang yang dulu sama orang yang sekarang adalah sama persis. Dimana ini untuk bisa menutup kelemahan dari yang cross section, di mana untuk cross section seperti Susnas itu adalah orang yang berbeda. Maka metodenya pun yang kami gunakan berbeda. Dari semua literatur yang selama ini kami dapat, yang kami diskusikan, bahwa dengan adanya data panel itu bisa menghilangkan beberapa kelemahan yang ada dari yang tadi dijelaskan oleh Bapak tentang jajan dan sebagainya, itu perilaku yang antroposogenous itu semuanya bisa di-cover, bisa dihilangkan dengan adanya yaitu penggunaan data panel. Dan selama ini juga yang bisa kami gunakan atas dasar pertimbangan literatur dan juga diskusi dengan beberapa teman yang intent dalam impact evaluation, bahwa penggunaan model fixed effect adalah menurut kami adalah yang lebih bagus dibandingkan metode-metode lain dari 4 metode randomize tadi. Itu karena adalah pilihan, karena sekali data kita adalah data panel, maka kita menggunakan itu tadi. Sementara model-model yang lain tadi, different menurut kami kurang cocok, karena di sini banyak sekali enam observatory jenisnya. Itu hanya mungkin akan sangat cocok jika itu dilakukan untuk menganalisis sebuah istilah intervensi yang full bisa di-cover, nggak akan ada faktor-faktor lain yang terlibat di dalamnya. Ya. Kemudian untuk mungkin beda yang tadi dijelasin dengan bapak-bapak asli yang tadi, sekali lagi mungkin saya kira datanya data cross section mungkin untuk yang Robert sama Yusuf. makanya saya dari kasus itu maka saya menggali untuk yaitu mencoba dengan data panel. Mohon maaf. Oh, maaf. Susenas coba 2005 2006. Ya, terima kasih Bapak. Mohon maaf, nanti saya akan cek kembali untuk 2005-2006-nya. Ya. Kemudian untuk maaf tadi ada mengapa dami dari kuantil tadi, saya akan memberikan sedikit penjelasan tambahan. Memang dalam membuat pengelompokan independen variabel apabila terlalu lebar jalannya dalam pengatur yang kami tangkap adalah kita boleh membuat itu dikelompok-kelompokkan sehingga beda antar kelompok itu tidak terlalu lebar sekali, bisa dikelompok-kelompokkan. Kalau tadi kita kelompokkan dalam kuantil atau 5 kelompok, karena apabila kita biarkan terlalu lebar maka dampaknya tidak begitu kelihatan. Dan juga dari education kita juga buat kelompok-kelompoknya. Istilah kami adalah bukan dami, tapi daminya bukan dami 1, 0, tapi ada daminya kalau kita buat 3 kelompok ya 1, 2, 3. Kemudian waktu meregreskan salah satu dari itu akan menjadi backstart atau tidak diikutkan dalam regres. Kalau yang dami biasa otomatis backmarknya adalah 0, tapi kalau dalam ini kami menggunakan backmarknya adalah salah satu yang kita tuju, tidak diikutkan. Kemudian untuk kemudian untuk dari Ibu, memang untuk responden FLS sudah ditentukan sejak dari sononya, sejak dari respondennya itu terus dan tidak bisa diganti, dan kami juga melakukannya adalah kuantitatif, tidak ada kualitatifnya, sehingga kami tidak bisa mengetahui lebih jauh tentang apa yang terjadi di rumah tangga itu. Semuanya adalah kuantitatif. Ya itu yang tidak kita miliki di Everest adalah kualitatifnya. Everest tidak ada data kualitatifnya, sehingga makanya tadi kita mencoba untuk menghubungkan yaitu kualitas dari fasilitas yang ada di desa itu, kemudian data-data yang namanya data komunitas yang belum bisa kita hubungkan. Beberapa yang bisa saya tangkap, mungkin apabila ada yang kurang nanti bisa kita jelaskan.
Okay, thank you. But Robert, you understand? I think you, you know, when I was studying Australia, I had to take IELTS. So you take not IELTS, but not A English, but A Indonesian, or I Indonesian test. So, I think that's all. Thank you so much, Pak Edi, and we give applause to Pak Edi. And I give you Pak Yusuf.
Yeah, let me quickly let's finish up now because we're finished. Well, we're not finished with the event. So we continue tomorrow, but with another part of the meeting. So we're done now with the academic event, and I have to say I really enjoyed it. I was actually quite impressed. I enjoyed the presentations. I was very impressed by the discussants. We really have to thank them. We had 6 excellent discussants who really took time and really came up with some excellent comments. I would urge our 6 presenters to revise your paper, take in the lessons from Ben, and really try to send this to a journal. I think you all have some promising work there, but still a lot of work to be done. I would also like everyone here to give us feedback. This is the second time we do this. We have a very different format than we had last year. We're still learning on how best to get people together, how best to get a good discussion going. So any feedback that you may have, just send me an email or Vita or Asad or Budi or just talk to us. We really appreciate it. And finally, I've been talking too much, so let me keep it very brief. I just think we need to thank a few people. We haven't thanked anyone. We have to thank DFAT, that's the Australian Department for Foreign Affairs and Trade. They support our activities, they've been very supportive with all our activities, so we really need to thank them. And we really need to thank Vita, who is really running this show. You know, Asad and Budi and myself, we just show up. and do whatever we told to do, and be very obedient. But she's really doing all the work with her whole team here behind her. So thank you very much. All I can say now is let's go for dinner. And thank you.
I have just some housekeeping announcements. Dinner will be served at the same restaurant. Tomorrow we will start at 8:30, and please be on time because we will have group photo first before we start. And for those who already registered for shuttle tomorrow, please contact Jan today, so we will be ready for tomorrow. Thank you, and have a nice day. Tomorrow we can check out at 1, Jan?
Yeah.
Yeah, 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock.